For years and years, I've said he's a lot tougher than you think. He's one of the most selfless stars in league history. He just led the NBA in scoring in his illustrious 12-year career. He's got 2 titles, 2 MVPs, 2 scoring titles. Not even LeBron could do that. He's the greatest shooter in the history of basketball. I think he's the greatest ball handler in the history of basketball. There's just not much I don't like, and for some reason, there's just a lot of basketball fans who have always doubted him, and boy, you can't this year, because this may have been the best he's ever been, and he had no help.
Where Colin was wrong.
Well, the Nets, Brooklyn clinched the number 2 seed. And do you know why they're a number 2 seed? And I was wrong about this, because James Harden missed a bunch of time. I always knew Harden was a great scorer. I didn't take that away from him, but I always said it's valuable. Do you understand this basketball team without KD, once Harden arrived, was 23-10. Without Harden and KD, they were 500 in the East. And I mean, they lost to some bad teams. Is that I've never really quite understood the whole Durant thing or a whole Harden thing. I mean, I know Durant's thin-skinned and great, and Kyrie's a flake but amazing. Harden, I was always like, that game doesn't translate to the playoffs. But he held this team up all year, and they would have been a 5 seed if he was out as long as KD was early. So hats off to James Harden.
Where Colin was right.
My initial reaction, the second the story broke on our show, Tebow to the Jags, I said, I don't like it. It's not going to play well in the locker room. It feels collegiate. It feels hokey. A day later, you were getting all sorts of leaks inside the locker room at Jacksonville. People thought it was hokey. Listen, Tebow's great at marketing. He's a nice guy. He's a marketing machine. Books and $100,000 a speech. He has made a fortune on this, and he's a nice kid. But it is time to move on and get a job. You couldn't hit a curveball. You can't throw a spiral down the sideline like the greats, and you're not going to play tight end. Maybe it's an HVAC thing, but I just thought, Urban Meyer's most difficult challenge will be understanding the sensibility of the NFL, not coaching. Urban can coach. That's not the question. He's a smart guy. He can win a bunch of games. He's very clever. But this didn't land well for a lot of people inside the room, coaches and players, according to leaks inside the organization.
Where Colin was wrong.
I give anybody props that can reinvent themselves. And Derrick Rose should get the 6th man of the year. Good for Derrick Rose. He averaged 15 points a game this year. He shot 3 points, 3-point shot, better than anybody, any time in his career this year. When he first broke into the league, I saw him as Westbrook. Hyper-athletic, can't shoot, not really a leader, doesn't make anybody better. He is now the 2nd most valuable player for the Knicks. He has been unbelievable off the bench. He now shoots almost 40% from threes. He's not nearly as vertical. He had to reinvent himself. It's Oral Hershiser after the surgery. This guy, the wheels came off, and he said, you know what? I'm going to reinvent myself. Westbrook still can't shoot. But Derrick Rose, who always had a little weird spin off his jumper, he's just not a natural shooter. You got to give him a ton of credit. He's just fun to watch now. He knows what he can do, and he knows what he can't, and he's worked on what he can't. And I have no problem giving him props and the 6th Man of the Year award. He's a wonderful piece for the Knicks.
Where Colin was right.
I've been a huge Dame fan forever, Damian Lillard. And because he went to Weber State, and because, he's kind of his own dude in the Pacific Northwest, a zillion miles from everybody, they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to make it as a 6th seed. Their best big, Nurkic, missed 35 games. C.J. McCollum missed 25 games. They can't really figure out the wing. They've never been able to figure out the wing. He basically rejuvenated Melo's career. A bunch of guys tried. He did it. Think about this. Bradley Beal and Westbrook may not make the playoffs, and those are Hall of Fame players. Dame, with his 2 best teammates hurt all year, they can't figure out a wing. It's in the Western Conference. They're a 6th seed. Listen, if Steph Curry's the best shooter in the history of basketball, you don't got to go far down the roll call to find Dame. He is one of the great shot makers under 6'5" in the history of the sport.
Where Colin was wrong.
Listen, I am a fan of Brad Stevens, but there is a narrative starting here, and I think it's reasonably fair. He couldn't play with Kyrie. This year, as Jason Tatum becomes a star, the Celtics are kind of a mess. Now, I don't blame all of it on him. Kemba Walker was a nice addition, but he's got bad knees and he's small. Do the Celtics need a complete overhaul? Well, I do think Danny Ainge needs to get out of this sort of draft pick tunnel and go get guys. But the narrative, which I always dismissed, Chris Broussard talked about it earlier, Joey has been talking about this, I always kind of dismissed, I can't coach stars. Something went wrong this year because it was a lot of the same guys, and they're kind of a hot mess. They're not good at the end of games. They didn't play hard all the time. And it's coincided with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum becoming really, really good players. I mean, say what you want about Jaylen Brown. He averages now 24, 25 a night. That's a star in the NBA.
Where Colin was right.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are awful again. What a shock. Dan Gilbert, bad owner. Worst NBA record last 3 years since LeBron left. Every time LeBron leaves, people should be embarrassed they burnt jerseys. LeBron had to leave. Every time he leaves, they are a complete grease fire. Dan Gilbert probably knows mortgages. He's good at that thing. He's great at the mortgages. He's probably a great family man, all that stuff. But as an owner of an NBA team, the minute LeBron leaves, they're horrible again.
Where Colin was wrong.
Russell Westbrook does have self-control. Yesterday, big game for the Wizards. Russell Westbrook hits a three. Oh, he's going to go crazy. Nope. Westbrook didn't shoot after a made three in the last 8 minutes of the game. Total self-control. Let Bradley Beal carry it. They took higher percentage shots. How about that? How about that? Mr. My best friend's the basketball. He backed off last 8 minutes. Didn't take a shot. Off a made three. You know, sometimes Russell hit a three. He'll go low cray. He'll go, okay, it's my game. He just backed off. I like it.
Where Colin was right.
Utah Jazz finished with the best record. Listen, I don't know how they're going to do in the playoffs. They do feel a little bit like a regular season team. I don't think they match up with the Lakers or Clippers at all in the West. But I will say this. This is the best sports franchise in America with no championships. They are very well run. They've always been a team that plays hard every night. They almost feel collegiate. Like in Salt Lake, that's the team you go watch. And this year, once again, Quinn Snyder, kind of the Brad Stevens of the West, but he does play well with stars. I think this is a really well-run organization. I think they draft well, they develop well, they're patient, and I don't think there's a franchise in North America that's as well-run as a franchise in a market that can be hard to get free agents that is as consistently good as the Utah Jazz. They are the least discussed great team year in and year out in professional sports. I mean, you know, there's small markets like Green Bay. We talk about them constantly. Now, but they do have some championships. But good for the Jazz. I don't know if they're a postseason team. I don't know. Got my doubts. All right. What were we on here a couple minutes ago that I was all worked up about today? You know, I leave town for a weekend, and I experienced some new stuff. I just want to talk about it.
I believe it was Green Bay.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Green Bay. We'll see if I can get to it. I don't know. Leroy Butler of the